Hey everybody, thanks for coming back. It's been a little bit, but I decided to kind of go off the Star Wars grid tonight and talk about what you're seeing in front of you here now that I had glanced over briefly in my earlier videos when I was kind of going around my collection room and some of the things that were sitting around. And wanted to just take some more time and kind of get in a little more close to this guy. This is, if you're familiar with Transformers, my rendition of Generation 1 version of Starscream from the original cartoon, built into an actual 1/48 scale F-15 Eagle model from Revell, and the custom base and stand that I did, and we'll kind of get into that and look at that a little bit more closely. Yeah, I have it at a flight angle, and we'll get into a little bit more of the reasons of the angle and the base the way they are. But just to kind of, I'm just going to do an overview, just kind of around the stand look for now, just to kind of let you know kind of how it's sitting, and then I'll pause this and then take it off the stand so that we can look at it in a little bit more detail and talk about what is going on with it. And it's really super cool. I know I say so myself, right? But it's I always loved the larger aircraft models and just the scale of them, and how it kind of anything, of studio scale models of movie props, of real planes. They just always appealed to me, and I had been toying with the idea of doing something like this. Like, if you were to pluck Starscream out of the cartoon into a real fighter using his design motif, what would it look like? And I don't mean like the Michael Bay Transformers, which the newer movies, which I enjoy them. In the first Transformers movie and Bumblebee were like the absolute best live action Transformers, and I don't really necessarily like the more modernized Ratchet and Clanky looking Transformers in robot form, or even in their modern vehicle form that they take. They still have a little too much just bare robotica kind of look to them. I like the more cartooned or design look of the Generation 1 cartoons, and decided to do up a Starscream model in between projects that I was doing with painting up my Boba helmets and my Black Series helmets and my Snowspeeder over there, which I don't know if I did a full look around. I think I did, but in between all the Star Wars stuff, I just saw this, and the idea came to my head, and I said, why not? Let's see what I can do with it. So there's that kind of basic around overview. So I'm just going to pause this, get these guys detached from each other, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. All right, be right back. Okay, we've got everything disassembled here, and I'll just talk about the base real quick, and then we'll get to the plane. So this is just a normal wood base that I got from local hobby store, craft store. It's what is it, 8-inch by, I think it's 9 or 10, 10-inch, and an inch thick, and it's got the scalloped out rim going around it. Just a plain wood base, nothing special about it. But what I did is I ended up painting it completely black as a base, and then was going to try and come up with a couple of different ideas on what to do with it. And as far as like the look of it, I don't want to put like a reflective Mylar mirror underneath of it, which I did get a piece of Mylar and was going to cut that out, but I just thought of other things. And the metal stand that you see here is just really what you think it is. It's like a automotive metal banded piece of metal for piping and so forth. That I basically, and I'm kind of talking ahead of myself of why this is the way it is, but in order to fit it into the plane at the angle that I wanted at, I had to kind of play with that to see what it would be. And then I basically heat treated the corners to kind of temper them so they'd stay there. I mean, you bump the thing and it wiggles a little bit like that, but it's not much of a problem. And then based on the design of the stand, or the base rather, is where I placed this. Screw these 3 screws down, covered everything with that real thin chrome foil material that you use for automobile models, for siding and chrome appointments and things like that. And then this plastic shiny Decepticon symbol is just got an adhesive back. It's the basic automotive emblems you could get at the auto stores to put on your vehicle, but they had run out of them. They don't make them anymore for Decepticons, as far as I'm being told. I can still find Autobot ones and Superman and Batman ones all day long, but I couldn't find Decepticon ones. I had to order this one off of Amazon, but it was like $5, so it was no big deal. So what I ended up doing with the design of the base, again, I was going to toy around with maybe putting a little bit of like a 3D element, like stacking up clear plastic or reflective plastic things to look like just spacey looking shapes. Like initially I wanted to have like a Cybertron looking base to it, so like kind of like what the surface of Cybertron would look like, with a couple of raised platforms or little buildings or little energon cubes or whatever. And I was toying around trying to find plastic pieces to do that, and I just couldn't find anything that really kind of sparked my idea. So when I was finishing up the model and doing some paintwork to it, I was referencing the animated movie from '86 that had just recently come out on 4K, and it looks astonishing on 4K. And it occurred to me, if you're familiar with the film, there's a scene earlier in the movie where the Decepticons are attacking the Autobots on their base, on the Autobot base. So the Autobot base starts closing up and turning into its battle mode, and Starscream is chasing the Autobots down this corridor. Like, if I were to turn it, it'd be like chasing them down this corridor like this. And the coloring is reminiscent of the coloring used in the movie. This isn't supposed to be an exact replica of the corridor, but I was just kind of getting the idea and trying to get the angle and the depth perception, the basic colors, like the sky, like the dark night sky with blue on the outside and fading. You have the sky is blue here, and then I have it fading out into black, into the darkness night. And that was basically a metallic blue that I just, as I taped everything off where I wanted it, and I just lightly sprayed the blue, not completely cover it, let some of the black show through in the corners where I wanted it to kind of get dark, and then a little more blue as I got up later here. A little biff for something that happened here when I pulled the tape off, and I had to kind of go repaint it, but the hell with it. I was already this far into it, and I wasn't really trying to sell this or whatever. I was just doing it for myself, and it's fine. And if anything, it just kind of adds to the just the uniqueness of it, I'll say, just to kind of put it in my head that way. And then I just taped off lines as I needed them, and painting the appropriate colors. I used some kind of, I forget the name of it, but it was like a magenta, like a metal flake, or a metallic magenta here, and then like a very bright orange acrylic that I had to use by hand. These were all sprayed, and so was the gray in the middle. But there was this just really, really super awesome orange-looking acrylic paint that I saw that I knew I had to use that. I couldn't find anything spray color-wise, but it just emulated the color design of the Autobot base so good to me, and I had to just do that. And then of course I used on the black, I used just a silver spray paint very lightly. I taped everything else off and very lightly just sprayed silver over it till I just started building up just enough silver to give it a gray look, not a silver look, because of the black underneath of it. And then I just scored some black lines just very roughly, just to kind of give oh shit, that's me bumping in, a grid perspective, and having them angled as you go in. So, from the top you don't see it, but when you're here, you see it. You see the angle that I'm getting at. So this is kind of, again, coming in this direction is what I was looking for. But the base is sitting like this, so it still gets that across. And then down here, just hand painted in a generic explosion kind of idea as he was firing his lasers and explosions were happening down there. And then find a good place for the Decepticon emblem, kind of like during the commercial breaks when they would come back and go back and forth, and the emblem or the logo would be kind of coming into frame from that. Just trying to kind of put all that together. So now, if you know what was going on in the film, Starscream's foot got caught in the one channel there, and he had to shoot it as he was in robot form. He had to shoot his foot off to get out of there, and then he flew away in robot form. So I mean, I'm not going to be able to do everything that way. So I just wanted to kind of get the idea of him flying in the direction and having some kind of interesting flying pose as he's sitting there, and flying away from the explosion, as if he shot and would come down and fly and shot away and continued on, just kind of getting around to that. So that's the base, and then of course before I put the emblem down, I locked it all down with a nice gloss coat. And I think, did I do it? Yeah. My custom thing is I always put the black felt material with adhesive backside on the underneath of my stands all the time, because it's a nice looking finish, but it also helps from things just sliding around if it's a flat piece of wood or plastic for my helmet stands. So that's what I did there, and it always looks pretty nice and finished. It's pretty cool. Sorry, bumped you there. But yeah, these three screws needed to be really. I had to drill that metal out and really kind of get them in the right place to get the stand just the way I needed it. So again, the pitch of the angle of the stand is keeping him at an upward angle, but when you look at it this way, it's turning him just enough upward so that he's got a bank to him a little bit. So that's pretty much the stand, and I'll go ahead and put this away and pause it up here, and then get the plane up in the view, and then we'll talk about him. All right. Okay, guys, we're back, and we've got our attention now on Starscream. So, as you can see, without it being on the base, you can see a little bit more of the design of the plane. The first thing I'll talk about will be the modifications that I had to do. And the first one of those I'll talk about, because it's the funniest, is the cockpit canopy right here. So we'll look inside the cockpit real quick. I didn't really do too much detail in the cockpit because I didn't want to really worry about that too much, because there was never a reason in the show. They never really went into that. You could see a little bit occasionally, depending on how they drew it. But I just basically did some just to give us some kind of realistic look. Some dark gunmetal, some aluminum, some silver appointments on the seats, and the black inside on the base and the cover of it, just to kind of give it some of that. So that being said, one of the key things of Starscream's canopy is he has that yellowish color to his canopy. So I was at first trying to figure out how am I going to do this. So I wanted to be able to see through it. So right away, just painting it yellow on the inside wouldn't work. I knew I was going to have to use some kind of clear paint, like turn signal paint, something like that. What method of painting it? I figured I'd start out with spray paint, just to try and give myself an even coverage. And the idea was sound, but what I'm going to tell you happened was the problem. So I buy this model kit, full complete model kit, for what was it, $25. I cannot find them anywhere but eBay. Nobody had them in stores. I had to just keep eBaying them. So when I finished the entire plane, and the canopy was the last thing I was going to do. So when it came time to that, I got a can of Tamiya yellow turn signal paint, spray paint, and taped out the outside of the canopy so none of that would get on it, and just and again, I'm good with my spray paints. I'm not putting them too heavy and whatever. And as I was spraying it on there, I would just put a little coat at a time and then look at it and see how see-through it was. And you could see through, but not clear. But it had a kind of a hazy look to it. But I just kept on, and as I was doing it, it was starting to kind of get a little bit, I don't know. It just wasn't cooperating. It was looking uneven. So I kind of added a little bit more paint to it, and it just, I just got the paint itself started kind of pulling off the inside of the glass, so I could see some visible runs, because the yellow was darkening in a rippling effect, kind of in spots. And I just said, "Oh, son of a bitch, what am I going to do about this?" So I decided to kind of wet sand the interior and to kind of get some of that excess paint down. And I did, not the interior, but the underside of the canopy. So I did that, and it worked, and it looked actually really good. And I decided to go move forward with it. And again, I'm very, very conservative on my glue. I use just like super sparing glue application. I barely use any glue whenever it's necessary, because glue is nasty, especially when it comes to clear plastic. So I fitted the parts first, make sure they go where I wanted them to go, and then I'm talking, if you're a model or you know what I'm talking about, just the little smallest and smoothest application of glue on the surface of the cockpit, not the canopy. So I'm not touching glue on the canopy. And the front of the canopy, like a charm, no problem. The main canopy, when I drop it into place, and it stayed there, and I held it and held it and held it and held it, and just, as soon as I took my finger off of it, it pops off. So I'm like, okay, I just need a wee bit more glue. So I just add a wee bit more glue, not much. It didn't squirt out of the sides, it didn't run or anything like that, and it didn't pop off. So I let it go, and then I just rolled a little bit of tape around it to hold it in place overnight. So I come back the next day to look at it, and there's this haze all in the inside of the canopy that I couldn't see through. It was like, and you could see this rippling that came up, and I don't know if it was the glue interacting with the paint or what, but I popped the canopy off and looked at it, and tried to and saw that that's kind of what I think happened. Some kind of weird reaction happened with the fumes in there or something. I don't know what was going on. But I tried wet sanding it out, and it just wasn't working. It got boogered, and I was pissed. Because and I'm like, it was the clear canopy, and it's not like I could just make that out of other parts. Like if I had to fix a part of a wing, I could at least cut something in a straight line of plastic, glue it on, and sand it and putty it and put it in. And so I checked online. Nobody's selling just the canopy. Revell doesn't sell just model parts. So I had to bite the bullet and buy another F-15 model just for the canopy. And I figured what I would do is that having that other F-15 model, that's cool. It'll just be backup parts. If I break something, at least I'll have them there and whatever. And that's how I worked it out in my head. So I went and when I went to do the canopy again, I took the front canopy off because I didn't know how I was going to do this with a second piece. I didn't know if it was going to fit or whatever. So and I decided to change the type of paint because I wasn't sure if the spray paint was just being the problem or not, because it didn't work the way I wanted it to. I was just kind of putting up with it. But I did find Tamiya has the hand painted in the bottle, the brush painted version of that paint, and I've used that before on other things and with some success. So I decided to go that route, and that's what I did. And it looked nice and wet and the way I wanted it, no problems. Getting things glued on, putting this canopy on, and I don't know. God, I'm just like, it's stressing me out. I don't know what was wrong with it, but when I went to press the canopy, this part, like down, and then grab the underside and just press and hold the canopy right here, there's a seam, just went and split open. It broke open. Needless to say, you could have heard every expletive that I could have thought coming out of my mouth. And I didn't know what to do at that point. I was like, I've gotten so far on all this, and I'm into it so deep now. Do I just keep going, or what do I do? So I just put it down for a few days and didn't touch it. But then I came back and I said, all right, well, I know what to do to make the canopy look good. I just need another canopy. So what did I do? Screw it. Found another F-15 model. So at this point now, I'm into 3 F-15 Eagle models from Revell for just the canopy, right? So anyway, I go and buy another one for like $26 at this point from somebody else on eBay. And I get the canopy and I paint it up and glued the front end. And I was going to glue the back end. But when I went to test fit it, just something about the canopy from that particular model, when I went to put them in and then press it down to fit it, it went snap and clicked right into place like a snap together model. And I stopped and I was like, well, is that good or is that repeatable or whatever? So I gently propped it back out, fit it back in, push it down, and click. It's something about the way everything was. It just snapped into place. And I said, the hell with it. It's staying right there. I ain't touching it, which is what I did. So it's being held in place by friction tension, and I am fine with that. If it pops out, nothing breaks, I just pop it back in. And it's a display model, not a toy that you fondle. So I don't expect to really have any problems with that. But so this is the canopy. It finally did what I wanted to do. Gave me just the right amount of yellow and just the right amount of you're not seeing clearly through it, but you see enough through it, and it really looked perfect for what I wanted in the real world design. Okay, so that being said, that's the reason I wanted to get that out of the way first, because that was the long-winded thing. So then having to make the decisions with the rest of the plane when I was building the plane first, how am I going to Starscream this? I mean, I knew the paint job that I needed to do as far as the stripes and the colors of everything. And that was obvious. I didn't have to worry about that. I'm very familiar with where everything's at, but how to do it, was just a little bit of a doing. So, I'll talk about that last because that was the easiest thing to get around. So I'm going to be careful with him, and I'm going to prop him up this way, up against the wall here, so that way I'm not fondling him as I'm trying to hold this thing. So we know how Starscream transforms, and he tucks his feet up under his fuselage, and that's how he looks in the show. You can see when you look at the show, you can see that off-centered triangle shape, with the longer slope. And I was trying to figure out what am I going to do. Am I just going to put his feet there like the toy did, or excuse me, how am I going to put it in there? So I was playing around with different ways of doing that, and I couldn't find anything that matched the shape that I want. So I mean, if you're looking at it now, you can see it, but just in general viewing it, it does the job. So it's a little crudely finished here on the top. It's not perfect, straight, and symmetrical, but hey, if we look at any of our favorite prop models from our movies, none of them are either. So, I'm in good company with that. It gets the job done, and I think it just again lends a unique, natural, organic quality to it, and it's all mine, right? So I basically I couldn't find anything that was the shape that I needed, so I had to go get a couple sheets of styrene plastic, just white flat styrene plastic sheets. Cut out a few pieces to fabricate these off slant triangles. So if any of you geometry people out there know what kind of shape that triangle is, where one side is slope is longer than the other, let me know. So I had to actually kind of tape them together the way I wanted it to look, and then kind of just lay it on the bottom of the plane where the plane's fuselage was, and just see how it looked. But the plane's fuselage has a lot of curvature for the engines and the tanks coming in. And these things weren't sitting right; they were kind of like off, and you could see the engine and the shaping below. So I had to fabricate a square box here, like this whole piece that runs down and goes across up the top here, and on the other side it comes down there to cover all of that. So I fabricated just a flat piece with. Let me see if I can do it this way. Actually, it'd be better. It was a flat piece, and then two sides that way, and got them flat down there, and glued them in, and puttied them in, and sanded them in, and then once I puttied them in and sanded them in and painted over them, for the most part they look like they're part of the fuselage. So it kind of worked that way. Let's see if I can get a look under here. So you can kind of see where I had to actually cut a piece that comes down in the middle where the two engines meet in the middle there. If I can do this without this sliding and falling, I'll be happy. This section right here, I had to cut a little slightly triangular piece of styrene, glue them in there, and then putty it all in, sand it all in, and then, did all that. To give these two separate pieces I made, somewhere flat to sit on. And then once I got them on there and realized they weren't perfectly the same width up here, but again, good enough for government work. It's, if I ever had to do this again, I was doing it as I went along and just cutting it and pasting it, and it was fine, for me at the time. I could make a more symmetrical and cleaner looking one But again, the hell with it. So then I needed to, because Starscream has two legs, and I couldn't tell that there was a separation here. I had these two things together, like one whole block. And I'd already glued this semi-triangle block together. So I actually had to take a Dremel and gouge a little channel down here, and then paint that channel black to accent the separation between the two. But, you know, again, glued it down, puttied it in, sanded it in, and then began the paintwork, well, afterward. So that was the majority of the fabrication that I had to do was to kind of get his legs tucked up under there, and somewhat, you know, and the right proportion. I didn't want these big, you know, nutsack looking triangles hanging out underneath. So it gives a good profile. I think it looks pretty appropriate to the way he is, and appropriate to the rest of the build. It's got a sleek little thing. I mean, it would make a plane really like this super tail heavy, but, you know, again, this is a make believe, right? So let's put him back up here carefully and gingerly. So the next thing that I had to do is figure out how I'm going to make his laser cannons here. In some views of the show, they look like Sidewinder missiles, and in a lot of, and I find more views of the show, they had this kind of pod look with fins at the back and so forth. So I went with that. So I decided to basically just take the fuel pods from the model itself. I guess I can set him. I'm probably making you guys dizzy. I went in this centerpiece from the fuel pod. I basically just glued the whole fuel pod together and then just cut it to the length I needed, two of them, from one for each side. And then the point of the fuel pod up here, I cut that off and then cut little slots into it to emulate where the laser turret, the laser cannons would shoot out of it. And, you can see through them. I wasn't trying to be so accurate that you could see the laser cannons in them, but it gave me enough of the idea that, there's a hollowing there, that there would be something pointing out of it. And so I got them all four around the, well, maybe it'd be easier if I just did it this way. 1 second. Just take him very carefully, and if you can see that, I did it on the top of those as well. So he's got 4 little laser cannon ports coming out of there. So that was the basics of the laser pods. And so then the little fins on the back, here, little directional vanes, they are just the wingtips from the planes, from the model's Sidewinder missiles. And so I knew I wanted to use that, but I didn't know how to really kind of get them on there, right away. But then the last thing I found is these, like, bulb ends here on either side, are just the white bumper end of a door stopper. That I had 2 door stoppers, that had the metal brass frame to them, and just they had the little white plastic end. I just unscrewed them off the end, and they were the perfect size and diameter of the pod. And they had there was a white plastic like a white plastic collar that I had from something else that I cut into shape, that basically I stuck that collar into the hole at the back of the pod here, and the white plastic collar basically threaded, or this basically I just threaded it up on the collar, and then glued it into place. And so I did that on both of them. And then basically I had this plastic flat plastic spot on the inside to glue these wingtips in. So I glued them in, and then very carefully kind of puttied that in, sanded it very lightly with a little bit of I rolled up a piece of sandpaper, just roughly got in there to get some of the texture off so it doesn't quite look like it was putty and whatever in there. But then after everything got glued together, that stuff was coming nice, and didn't have to worry about it. And the way I mounted them is I took the actual mounting frame for the original pod of the model, cut it down to size to shape it a little bit, and cut an angle at the front of it to kind of look, aerodynamic. And carved a little channel under the wing for that to sit in, glued them in, and then glued the pod in, and there she has it. So that was the other fabricating, the other more major fabrication that had to be done. The last, not the last, but the second to last thing was these signature wingtip points that Starscream has. The original F-15 wing just comes right across. It just looks like that. So one of the benefits of having, a second model is I had some extra wingtip points that I used, and I took them off of, what did I take them off of? Some other piece on one of the other models. It was something, actually I think it was part of the, landing gear covers. As a matter of fact, now I'm thinking about it, or the inserts for the landing gear. But I basically just cut out a little triangle-shaped piece and sanded it down to it was a little too thick. It was thicker than the material of the wing, so I had to sand it on either side, sand it down to the thinness of the wing, and then kind of pre-measured the angle coming down from here, and then mating it up with the line that's already kind of etched in the wing here, and just kind of completed that flow, that motion, and just didn't want to bring the tip too far in, just enough to give a tip there, to make it look like it's slightly, like realistically aerodynamic on the plane, like it would be part of the build of the plane, not a ridiculous looking, useless long point or something. But it's still enough to be indicative of the way Starscream looks. Excuse me. So got them both the way I wanted them. They broke off a little bit. You can kind of see where I had to putty that one in a little bit more, but as the weathering and everything got put on there, it just kind of looks more like just wing damage from battle. So that's kind of how I got away with a lot of that, was the weathering. So the last thing that I had to fabricate, that I'm remembering anyway, was the inside of the air intakes here. See if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this way. It might not work this way, but it works a little bit. In here, there was another piece that you had to add in. It had like for the normal model, and I didn't put it in because Starscream doesn't quite look like that, and it just kind of worked that way. So I guess that's not really fabricating. That's just not putting in something that I knew Starscream wasn't there with. So no other real fabrication had to be done physically to get it to where I thought I wanted it to be Starscream. So the rest of it was paint job. So I started with the red and the white paint job. Just nothing special to it. Just taped off where I knew I wanted the lines to be, again based on referencing on the show and the cartoon. Just getting the best thickness to both lines that I wanted, and doing that. So what I did though is the entire coloring here was the entire thing was white. And then once the white was dry, I taped off a little bit of the inside of the white and then retaped off outside of the white and then laid red on top of that so that the red would be nice and bright on top of that white. And I did that on both sides under here as well. Then once the paint was done, then I mounted these. I forgot to say that. I mounted these two things after that. I wouldn't be able to get them in there if I didn't. So before I put the pods on, I did all the taping and the painting. And then, of course, the paint job of getting all the red the way I wanted it. A very basic tape job. I just put some very flexible model tape down, X-Acto knife, cut out where I wanted to follow the shape of the fuselage, just all the way around, and it was tight getting in there in these little slots, but I got them in there, and so that way the insides are painted red as well. Didn't miss that. And just sprayed that just a bright red, just Tamiya bright red spray paint. The thrusters are just hand painted gunmetal and detailed with aluminum for weathering. That's all I really did to them. But made them a little darker than they normally would be because he's that dark on the show. And just applied a little bit of aluminum weathering. That was the easiest ones to do. But the way that they have you build those, all the thruster pieces are in sections. So I had to glue all these little sections together, and it was kind of a pain in the butt. But anyway. Then he's got these on the toy. These are actual physical, folding points where he transforms out of. And I obviously wasn't worried about that. I just painted them where they are and kind of detailed and scuffed around them to kind of hide a little bit of that they're just painted squares. The underside, I was going to try and do something like that to where his chest vents are. On the show and in the toy, they are raised and have a recess into them. So I basically just kind of cut out around them to kind of give it a defined edge and kind of painted it up a little bit to look like it has. I mean, there is a bit of a bump there, and it's kind of painted it to look like there is some depth to it, like a little bit of forced perspective on the paint. Like I don't know if you can see it. Like maybe I should point that out here. What's this? Hang on. Like up here, I'm making like a little paint color here, and then a little paint color here to indicate that there's two separate pieces, and to kind of make it look like it's sitting a little bit further back in, and then darkening this up here to kind of give it a top-down shadow look. And again, you're seeing the underside of this, so it's not going to be something that really stands out. And as you can see, the weathering is my standard, typical type of weathering. It wasn't really. I'll talk about it here in just a minute because I'm going to finish up a little bit about the rest of this. The last thing as far as the cosmetics to it that I had to paint was the nose cone. I painted that blue because I see him sometimes it's not blue, but other times, most of the time, I've got a scuff on the wall. Where did that come from? I got to clean that off. There's a couple of them. Oh, good Lord. Anyway, more times than not, he's had a blue nose cone, so I went with that. More times than not, if he has it, I put it on him. So I'll come down to the Decepticon symbols here. I know he's got them on the underside of the wing sometimes, but again, just making a executive decision, I decided to just do it on the top, because again, I've seen many times where they aren't on the underside of the wings. So again, going with that idea, like he's always got them on the top of the wings. Sometimes they're on the bottom, sometimes they're not, depending on how they drew them in the show. So if I see them like that, if there's more times that it's not, then I don't put it on. So I basically just kind of went with how he looks on the show, and what the sizes should be. The cartoon, I should say the toy and other toys that I've seen don't really kind of look proportionately the way I thought they should look. So hang on a second. I mean, I know it's like 11 o'clock and I'm drinking coffee, but whatever. Yeah, or it might be past 11. I don't know. Anyway, so I couldn't really find any Decepticon stickers or decals. Well, I could find decals. There was a decal set that somebody was making, like from China, and it was like $35. And I'm like, I'm not, I've already gone through what I've gone through with this thing, and I just didn't feel like waiting weeks for this decal set to show up with just one set of the size that I need. If I boogered it up, I'm screwed. So I legitimately, all I did was found the Decepticon symbol that I wanted online, saved the image, the GIF image, and filled his color in with purple, and then printed him out on a very thin stock paper, and he's basically just like an inch by inch size image. So I had to kind of work out the print to do that, and again, I was trying to wonder to see if I wanted to make the areas like where the eyes and everything and the lines, if I wanted them to be see-through to see the plane's skin underneath of it, or what. And again, I've seen a few times in the show that it doesn't really look like that. So I just went with it, and yes, it was easier. I'm getting away with it. But it ended up looking fine. So I just basically printed out on paper, and very carefully. Yeah, he came off. I knew that was there before. Very carefully cut them out with an X-Acto, and what happened here was a booger as I was putting it on, and it kind of pulled off. And again, I'm just giving this like a weathered and beat up look, so things aren't going to be perfect. But anyway, I cut them out on the outside shape, and then literally glued the paper down onto the model. And then once the glue was dry, I brushed a layer of just clear glue adhesive over top of it to kind of like seal it in, like a decal set type idea. And then once that was solid and secured in, I just took some 800 grit sandpaper and just sanded the image down. So it's not perfectly smooth, but it's not really all that raised. But again, we're not macroing up to there when you're looking at it. You can't even tell that it's excuse me, that it's paper. So that's what I did with the decals to get the Decepticon stickers on there. One other point of note was the wings, the paint on the wings was done the same way. I painted the wings blue. It's just a Tamiya bright blue, and taped out where I wanted the red to be. Painted that on, and then just by hand painted a black outline around each wing. Come on. So yeah, you can see what I did with that. So finally, talking about the weathering here, general the general process for me is I build it up. I don't just start with one thing all the time. Sometimes it depends on what I'm working on. This one in particular, excuse me, I started with the damaging. I wanted to see, get the aluminum colored scratches where I wanted them to be first. Like the wingtips, the little are on the wings. You can see the little shear as he's flying through the air. The things that are just kind of like peppering the thin wingtips, and I did that, around most of the wings, getting some aluminum damage around the sharp areas and the tips of everything. Not everywhere, just and try not to put the same thing on either side. Trying to keep different stuff happening here at different places on this side and so forth. So I started with that, with the aluminum scratch painting, coloring, then adding. I'm trying not to cough. Yeah, because I'm talking here and my throat is dry. So I started adding the actual damage, like the blackening, where he would take laser shots or flare of fire, or little laser blast bolts. And where would he receive most of his damage? I mean, he's flying up in the air, so he's not going to get too much top-down damage, right? He's going to have a few things like on the wings, as somebody might be flying in after him and shooting down at him that way. But most of the time, he'd be getting shot at from the ground, is the way I worked at it. So I put most of his obvious damage under here. His wings and his fuselages, and a good blaster bolt there, and stuff happening to his feet there, and just kind of doing that. Some scoring and carbon scoring there and that way. Got it to a point where I liked it, and the different colors I would put, you can see here, a little bit of grays, not just all silver, so some gray damaging there, some rust in some areas. I can't remember where. I was just kind of slapping things on here and there. And then finally, just a black wash. So I just would wipe sections down with the Tamiya liquid panel line paint, so you can see it does what it's supposed to. It acts as the panel lines on the planes, but it also leaves this nice dirt film over it if you don't wipe it completely off. So that's what I did. I just basically blotted it off and wiped it off more where I wanted the plane to be a little cleaner looking. You can really kind of, on this side, you can tell where that black washing really enhanced the panel lines and the vents and everything on the plane that way. So, and again, this was all before the canopy went on, just to reiterate. So once that all got done, and then I locked it all down with a coat of satin clear finish, then I popped the canopy on. So that was basically the overall. My God, I'm almost talking an hour on this, but hey, it was a busy model. It literally took me almost a year to make this. I mean, if I would have sat down and do it, it wouldn't have. But in between all the other things I was doing, putting this down, coming back to it later, it literally almost took me a year to make this thing. So the final thing I wanted to kind of come into was the fabricating of the fuselage under here led to this. I have to do it this way. Led to this slot right here, and that ended up perfectly suiting the metal frame that I made into the base. So it slides right in there. It holds nice and tight under, just a nice friction hold. I don't have to secure it or glue it, and I can take the plane off when I want to, as long as I'm careful and I don't abuse it. It won't wear it out. So yeah, there's that. And I'll just put him back on one more time for one more look before we call this off, and I'll be right back. All right, everybody. I'm back. Thanks for dealing with me with this whole hour of talking about my Starscream model build. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, always feel free to ask. Always keep it civil. And maybe you can build one of your own, or there was 2 other jets that were in the show, and I very short amount of time, very briefly, thought about using the remaining models that I had to build up the other 2 models. But again, I'm out the canopies, and I wasn't about to go through all that. So I ended up just selling off the remaining model kits on eBay for parts. So if it ever comes down to it, at least I gone through it before, and I can make an easier build if I wanted to make one of the other jets. But if if you guys ever have the inkling to do it, I'll be glad to give you some more tips if anything that I said here didn't quite answer your questions. Yeah, thanks for sticking with me, and have a great Halloween weekend. Bye.